So what's going on in Germany right now? Well, these days it is the mini season of organized madness. Well, kind of. In the Rhineland, but also in southern Germany, it's quite the exceptional thing. The Swabian Alemannic, so Schwäbisch-Alemannische Fastnacht, the Carnival, makes the visitor think that he is witnessing a folk medieval tradition. But is the Carnival we celebrate these days really that old? Well, first of all, we could say that precursors of Carnival were celebrated in Mesopotamia, for instance, around 5,000 years ago. Even back then, there was this idea of equality during the celebration, so I mean by this that workers and rulers were on the same level for a short time. The principle is still part of the Carnival tradition today. In the Middle Ages, from around the 12th to the 16th century, Fools' festivals were celebrated around January the 6th, during which church rituals were also parodied. And then the Carnival moved up until February and March. So Carnival, Fastnacht or Madika are the same phenomenon today, basically celebrating and dressing up together before Ash Wednesday, so that is the date of the begin of the fasting time. The original occasion is often located in the old Roman beginning of the year, so mid-March. The Lupercalia festival was celebrated then in February. It was meant to promote health and fertility and took place on the Palatine Hill and involved a blood sacrifice performed by the priests known as the Luperci. Then the feast could begin after thongs were cut out from the skin of the sacrificed animals and people began running away with them naked. So pretty fun, I would say. But as we know, the Carnival today, or fasching as it is also called here in Germany, the origin lies in Christianity. Carnival was the fool's play. The symbol of the sin is the fool, der Narre in German. In the early modern period, he even carries a mirror on the stick and thus illustrates his egocentricity and self-reflection. His origins are in folly. He is the fool, as described in Psalm 52, consequently a weak-willed denier of faith. The medieval church promoted Carnival thus to symbolize sin. People dressed up as devils and wild men ran through the city. There was excessive consumption. There was sexual debauchery. In the theology of the Middle Ages, Carnival is the example of distance from God. And on Ash Wednesday, however, Lent begins, so the fasting time, which is the time of reflection and confession of sins. And everything begins anew again. So Carnival was the world turned upside down, and it could also be interpreted as the time where you were allowed to do anything you wished for a fraction of time. Everything was permitted, like a form of catharsis. Fastnacht is, in other words, the last night before fasting. The name itself suggests that. In the Middle Ages, life was vegan for 40 days, not that it was very meaty, except for the 40 days as well. Except for fish, the animal products were forbidden, so there were no eggs, no milk, no butter, no cheese, no meat. Since meat and other foods had to be eaten that night, this also had a pragmatic purpose, so basically consuming everything you couldn't manage to consume before that. In Nuremberg, for example, there were butchers who danced at Carnival until the 16th century, holding on to sausage ends. So financially too, this was a period of deprivation for many traders because they couldn't sell their products. The oldest known literary mention of Fastnacht can be found in the work of the author Wolfram von Eschenbach in Parzifal. The term Fastnacht also appeared in southern Germany and in the Bavarian-Austrian area in the 13th century, meaning the selling of drinks before fasting time, the fasching. Meaning the time of merry-making before Lent. We also have the word from French Carnival, from the Italian Carnevale, from all the Italian forms such as the Milanese Carnevale. So this comes from two Latin words. The first is caro, which is flesh, a piece of flesh, and the other word is levare, which means to raise or to remove. So basically the removal of meat. There is also folk etymology which has it a little twisted, so it's like carnevale, like flesh, farewell, but that's a little far-fetched. The Reformation abolished fasting and with it Carnival, although in some places the Protestant Christian people continued to celebrate up until the 17th century. Former Protestant cities are often Carnival-free zones to this day. 300 years later, the Enlightenment also considered Carnival to be an archaic remnant of an old society that should have been abolished. The unreasonable Carnival was classified as being nonsense and disturbing. In addition, it would be a danger to public order, as the southern German states of Württemberg and Baden describe the Carnival in their official bans in 1809 and 1810. However, German Romanticism managed to save the Carnival. The history-conscious, nature-loving reaction to the Enlightenment was blessed by cheerfulness. The Carnival was now defined as culture, tradition, custom, and the upper bourgeoisie discovered the tradition of the lower social classes. They began to aestheticize the festival. Now it should be carried out beautifully and moderately. So we have in 1823 the revival of the modern carnival that happened in Cologne and Köln, which was then under Prussian rule. The excess was organized by a committee that copied a lot from the Prussians. So we have uniforms, we have medals, we have the jester's cap. The Carnival of Heroes, which appeared on the street processions, was also invented. So we have these organizational committees which arose in many places at once. The state wanted to contain and organize this cheerfulness. Southern Germany also became a carnival country, and the fastnacht, as it was perceived in the Middle Ages with those, demonic masks, disappeared. There were now masked balls for the bourgeoisie, for the upper class, and colorful costumes floated through the city. Masks were considered unfashionable and gradually tended to disappear. There were, for example, the Rote Funken, the Red Sparks. The former city soldiers had just established themselves as a society, and there was also a group known as Dreigestirn, the Three Stars, which were the Farmer Prince and Virgin, Bauerprinz und Jungfrau, as a reminder of the former free imperial city of Cologne. Then as now, a man was usually dressed in the costume of the Virgin. After the founding of the festival committee, the people of Cologne could no longer be held back. One carnival society after the other arose. In 1860, we have ghost processions on the evening of Saturday, and even after the turn of the century, the period of the fools continued. 1902 was the first appearance of the honor guard of the city of Cologne in the Shrove Monday procession, Rosenmontag in German. Since 1906, there has been the Prince Guard as well, and many other companies established themselves. Except for a short episode at the time of the revolution in 1842, when the Rosenmontag parade, Shrove Monday, was completely dominated by the unromantic theme of the working class awakening. The organized carnival was intent on a good relationship with the state. We have in Cologne the Carnival of Heroes, then the Carnival of Emperors, and since Germany became a Reich again, we had the Carnival of Princes. With the beginning of the empire, historicism and a return to the old grew as a mentality. In southern Germany, a landscape of small towns and no metropolis character, the craftsmen began to reclaim their old fastnacht traditions from beginning with the 1880s. This conservative rollback was not carried out in the Rhineland, where the carnival developed into a folk festival. In southern Germany, on the other hand, the historical parades were abolished and fools' guilds were founded. This move was called Narrensprünge, the fool's leaps. So we basically have a phenomenon known as the invention of tradition. The young Weimar Republic after World War I banned parades and jester jumps, but allowed historically verifiable tradition, whatever that meant. As a result, the number of fools' guilds exploded in southern Germany. Fastnacht clubs now often had the adjective althistorisch, so old historical, in the name, in order to be able to prove the required verifiable tradition. So in order to be able to celebrate a real carnival, every playful, skilled, invented traditional figures without further ado. So we have a lot of making up in this era. Stuff like the Bonndorfer Blumenschlucker came about. Today's seemingly ancient figures of jesters actually come from this time. Finally, the National Socialists courted this tradition as well, since the southern Germany Carnival was considered a showpiece of culture. It was linked to Germanic roots, that's something unproven, and the Christian values were negated. The Cologne processions showed anti-Semitic motifs. Carnival sessions began with a Hitler salute and the singing of songs related to Horst Wessel, a powerful symbol in the NS propaganda. He was a guy who was shot dead by 2 communists. In the 60s, there was another carnival explosion. There was also a revolt against these festivities, and as a consequence, thousands of new fool's guilds emerged. Local chronicles, place names, agricultural traditions were studied, and they were meant to establish and invent further new jester figures. So plainly speaking, every new jester figure created opened up a highly interesting insight into the building blocks of local identities. At the same time, alternative traditions arose in Köln, and not only rejecting the street carnival. Well, nowadays, this idea can be found all over the world. It's no longer particularly related to either Christianity or some form of revival of history. It can be considered an anchor of identity in a globalized world, but these costumes and customs can remain alive only because traditions tend to be reinvented all the time. So we can say as conclusion that Carnival is therefore ancient and at the same time flexible and lively and, just pure fun sometimes. This was Irina. Thank you for listening to me. This is my small YouTube channel on culture and language. Please consider subscribing and helping me out. Thank you very much.